Why do you have so much energy today? So, M-Sport. First of all, how did you enjoy living in Cumbria?
I love living in Cumbria. I did a lot of the hikes there in the Lake District. I actually went up there Scarfell Pike with my girlfriend. Yeah,
that was a good double date, wasn't it?
It was a lovely day. Well, we also went up the mine.
Which one was that?
The one that we hiked up with both of our girlfriends.
Oh yeah, that's the day I'm thinking of.
The abandoned mine. It was pretty cool, pretty good fun.
Bit sketchy when in the rain.
Yeah.
It doesn't rain there as much as everyone says. I don't think it rains much more than it does down south.
Bro's lying. Bro is lying.
You reckon?
Yep, 1,000,000%. And in Wales. It's like north of England. It goes Scotland, Wales, and then it goes north of England.
Yeah, but if you put it in perspective, it's high. It's more hilly, isn't it?
What, Scotland?
Well, the north.
Yeah, that's generally how it works.
I know.
All right. So then why are you saying it's not? Why are you saying they're lying? Because they're not.
It's not that bad, though, is it?
No, it's not that bad, but so.
Anyway, back onto topic. M-Sport. First of all, how do you think? I found personally, like, the first 2 weeks or month, I was so like unbelievably cautious and over-analysing everything I did. Do you think that you felt the same on placement or not?
Yes, I was very enthusiastic. I think we both were going there, getting our teeth in, getting stuck in. And I think for the first couple of weeks, me and you were put with just odd engine builders and just said, you know, that anything they need, they'll hand off to you, you go do it. I think that was pretty good for both of our confidence. It actually gave us quite a good rep of in the engine shop of being actually quite caring and quite professional.
Yeah, I think to be fair, actually, definitely you could. The proof of that was when Nigel turned around to us and was like, just give something to these two boys and you know it's going to get done. Right? And whilst that was a passing comment, I think that subconsciously that shows the effect that we had on the engine shop, I think, in quite a positive way. I'm not trying to blow our own horn too much, but yeah, I think that was good.
Yeah.
How did you find building your first engine across the dyno?
Very nerve-wracking, yeah, so me and Archie were both on the TOCA program. We both got moved over to that. I did a bit on GT3 and you did a bit on Dakar, and we had a bit of fun there. And then, yeah, we both got moved to the touring car world, and so we both did stripping and building of these touring car engines for the season just gone. And so we had pretty good fun doing that. But yeah, building that, it was quite scary. I was put with an engine builder to do my first couple, and you were put with a builder to do yours. And then even though you're put with someone to do it, it's still pretty nerve-wracking that they're quite open there. You're quite free to do your own thing. And yeah, it was quite scary, here watching your thing go over the dyno, scared if they're going to have a failure or not. But
and me and Elliot were learning off the back of some of the engineers as well. So we would spend a day or two a week in the dyno cell. And so me and Elliot had seen a fair bit of the development across the winter months of this TOCA engine. And so we both knew how hard they were pushing that engine. And that was quite also nerve-wracking to know that your engine's having its head properly kicked in across the dyno. But quite a relieving feeling and a proud feeling I got. I don't know about you. But when your engine comes off the dyno and they're like, yep, it's all good, it's made the power, no leaks, you feel quite chuffed with yourself, I think I was anyway.
Yeah. So the dyno that we're talking about, it's just an engine dyno. You essentially just, once the engine's built, you put it on there and it's just straight to the flywheel. The shaft goes straight to the flywheel and then you can get the engine power to the crank. And then after they've tested that and made sure it's signed off, no oil leaks, then it gets put in the car and they're happy with it. For going more into that, you were pretty much on the rally side very much, doing all the rally engines, and I was on the GT3 side. I didn't do very much Dakar, but yeah, what do you want to talk about the rally side and using Life?
Yeah, I mean, Life Racing's I actually find quite a nice software to work around. Definitely a good software to introduce yourself with. I mean, Bosch and Cosworth are very powerful softwares, but I found from being exposed to Life Racing first helped me move that learning across. That step was a bit easier, whereas I think Bosch and Cosworth was probably more what you just knew. I don't know, how did you find that learning period for Bosch and Cosworth? Was that quite a step, quite a struggle?
Yeah, but quite a step, because before that, me and Archie had just used the Life Racing on the rally car here. So, jumping from different softwares to Cosworth to Bosch, Yeah, I mean, you need to get your head around it, but generally it's, everything's all the same. If there's one issue in life, it moves over onto Bosch. It's the same measurements and things that you see, so it's all very similar.
And I think actually it gave us both a fantastic benefit of having to not just understanding the software and what failures look like in that specific software. You had to really understand like the PID control, what's actually going on in the combustion process, and really understand the ins and outs of like how VVT solenoids work and the pressures in them, so that you can move that skill of identifying issues with the engine across softwares and not be restricted just in using one. So I think that's definitely given us a broader skill of and a better understanding of how the internal systems around an engine work, which I would say is quite a valuable skill.
Yeah, definitely invaluable. It was really good to learn that, on our placement year. I think a lot of the people that are in our year have gone off to their placements. Quite a few of them have just been stuck in one role, in a design role, and they've just been, doing that for the whole year. But me and you at M Sport, we were pushed around, not pushed around, but we went through different departments. I think we had a pretty good time and a pretty good placement. Yeah, definitely.
And the atmosphere at M Sport's always so, you're constantly in a competition in a good way. Like, that the whole of M Sport is always pushing to maximise every single opportunity. And I think especially when you're on placement and you're trying to learn, that's really powerful, because it means that like me and Elliot used to go home after a day at work, and if one of us had understood something that the other hadn't, then we would essentially spend the afternoon teaching it so we both understood it. And that gave us a very powerful learning environment, and I think brought us on in leaps and bounds quite quickly as well, which is always positive as an engineer to have.
Definitely. One thing that really stuck with me in my time while we were at M Sport, when me and Archie went for the job interview, I think Nigel, who was our boss at the time, mentioned it to both of us. He said, we've got the best rally drivers in the world. We want to have the best engineers and the best mechanics in the world to follow those. And so from that, coming from a small rally club, I think really sort of, made us. I think we were already, pretty switched on and pretty happy to be there. But I think, we realised, we've got to step up a level here in professionalism. We've got to be as professional as possible. The joking around stops now. I don't know what you thought of it, but
yeah, no, 1000%. And like that first time you walk in and you're like, everyone's quiet, everyone's like a surgeon working on things. I think it's both changed our outlook and our the way we start building or attempt a problem. Is like M Sport was you're almost a surgeon as an engine builder there. Everything was done methodically, all your tools were laid out parallel, and you were almost a sales technique for that company as well. We used to have tours every Thursday, I think, was it? And so you constantly had people coming over inspecting your work, which is great as a learning experience as well, because it means the other engine builders can see if you're going wrong, and then they can correct you before you have to have that major issue to put you back online. But it's definitely given me an almost OCD and methodical aspect to how I approach problems now. I don't know if you feel the same.
I definitely feel the same, yeah. In our time at M Sport, we also did quite a bit of work with build books and creating build books and altering build books. So these are procedures on essentially how to build an engine for each program and what specific tolerances there to be to. And I think that gave us both, a very good mechanical understanding from reading previous build books and knowing what to change, and also with tolerances, knowing what tolerance is right and what's just, when someone says a tolerance to you, as now having completed my placement at M Sport, off the cusp I can think, no, that doesn't sound right, or yeah, that sounds pretty plausible. I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, else? Definitely. That sort of judgment or critical thinking skill you definitely pick up from spending time around it, and even stuff like it can make the fixes that you'll have to carry out, and for example, like a service in a rally environment, where you can make a conclusion quickly because you know how it should be done. So, for example, if you're thinking about bolts, for example, we now understand what size thread engagement you should have per size of bolt, and it's no longer like, slap a nut and bolt on it because it needs to be bound. It's like look, this nut's going to work, this thread's going to work, actually that's going to steel and alley, you want to be around this torque, and you may not have the cut right build book to do it because you don't have the time and somebody hasn't created it, and you're in that sort of split judgment decision. But now I think me and Elliot can make those calls and feel like we've got a lot of confidence behind it because we understand the ins and outs of the materials and the thread engagement and that sort of surrounding area. I'd say. Don't know if you feel that.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. I don't even want to talk about going out to touring car events with M Sport and everything we did there.
Yeah, that was a big push, I think, for both of us, because certainly you didn't have so many people to fall back on and ask questions. You really had to have that confidence in yourself, and also have that sense of like self-confidence in what you were doing, because you've got a whole team of mechanics trying to get involved with what you're doing because they think they know what's right, but they don't understand the full picture of how things are going. So you have to be firm and say, no, look, this is the procedure, this is how it's done. In a almost a slightly selfish sense, you have to be like, look, I'm here to make sure this engine works properly. I understand your needs, but it's imperative that this engine is prepped correctly. And I remember having some cars come in for a pit stop and like people trying to rush things and not talk things. And I remember turning around to the team and just going, look, this car has to go out correctly. I'm talking it. If you're going to help me, if you're not going to help me, that's fine, but it must go out like this. So that sort of independence, critical, harsh thinking is invaluable, I'd say, actually.
I'd say, yeah, so M Sport offer just an engine package for the British Touring Car Series. So when me and Archie go there, we had, at the start of the season when me and Archie were working, we had 7 cars or 7 engines, which we would look over, and me and Archie had to deal with all those engines. There was, like Archie said, there was no one to fall back on, no other mechanics there. We had engineers which deal with the laptops, but other than that, on technician side, there was just us and relying on ourselves, to get everything done. And it was very stressful at times. I think we both can admit that. But yeah, I think we've learnt a lot from it, definitely. A couple of times it got very, very stressful. I think one of the times was at Thruxton for me, which is arguably the fastest racetrack in the UK, British touring car racing track in the UK, and we had a lot of crashes out of our 7 cars that weekend. And going to these events, you always carry spare engines, so we had about an equal amount of spare engines to cars. So when we went away to an event, if we had 7 cars, we'd have 7 spare engines. And thankfully we did that, because in one weekend we had 4 drivers crash at Thruxton, and it was very stressful. A lot of blocks were damaged, unfortunately, just due to high-speed crashes. And from that, yeah, there was a lot of engine swapping in a very short amount of time. I think quite often, we'd be staying late at the track trying, fix an error or something, an accident that's happened. But yeah, I would say we've learned a lot from that.
Yeah, and it was good. You definitely had your hard times, such as Elliot's 4 engine swaps in a day, which was quite exciting. And I remember having quite a few stressful moments, shall we say. And engine swaps aren't much fun to do on touring cars. There we go. But we did also have some quite nice highlights. I mean, we gave, I think it was PMR, had their first win in something like 1,300 days or something like that.
Mikey Doble's first win in the Btcc. You were there for that, you got to watch him.
Yeah, that's quite exciting. And then they also had a couple of wins later as well in the season. So it feels quite good when you can deliver the performance that the teams need to extract the wins out of the car, which is quite satisfying, especially in touring car where you've got like manufacturer teams and private teams. And when the private teams are pushing to get those wins and you're giving them that position, that chance to get on the podium, it makes it all worthwhile, really.
Yeah, it certainly does. For a team like PMR, who's arguably one of the smaller teams in the Btcc, who haven't been the most competitive in the last couple of years, to build an engine for them and let them go out there and pretty darn well dominate that, that day,
season,
that first section of the season. It was, pretty good to watch, when they're going up against people that have paid a lot more money for a lot more expensive engines. And, we're there showing them it can be done, on a budget. And, it's pretty great, it's pretty good fun.
They're quite inspiring as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, always good to be involved in a project like that and see the reward as well in those wins, which is quite exciting. Me and Elliot also were tasked with the challenge of being in charge of all the donor engines that were coming into engine shop. So this included the engines for Rally 2 and also the engines for Dakar. So that was quite an exciting thing for us to lead, I think is probably the correct word. Lodging every part, the location of it, making sure everything's on track, inspecting everything that comes apart for imperfections and deformities. and making sure that we were giving the builders everything they need to build that engine correctly and sending it to machine shop in the correct state so they can perform what they need to do on the rest of the engine, which was also quite exciting because it also led us to building the build book as well.
Yeah. Like that. So what Archie means when he talks about donor strip, so at M Sport we get delivered whole engines from Ford, which we then disassemble, take down, keep the parts that we want, the other parts, you know, that needs changed, and we send them off to the correct place that they need to go to get changed. So that was, you know, it was we did that right at the start, and I think it gave us a very good fundamental learning experience of, you know, all the parts that go into an engine, because we'd done these, we'd done the engine in this a couple of times, but I think it was, you know, obviously when you're stepping up a level, things change, whether it be to Dakar, to Rally 2. With the Rally 1 engines, they're all bespoke, so there is no donor strip for that. So we didn't do any of that, unfortunately.
And it's quite exciting as well to lead on the Dakar donor strip. It was far more us led. And it also meant that when we were coming to the end of our placement, we knew we had to make sure everything was in place, that somebody could easily pick up that project and keep it moving efficiently, and there wouldn't be a big dip in output of donor engines, which would then hold up the building process. So that was quite an exciting task to build all the build books and all the procedures in for that. But I was also just thinking that I think probably something we haven't mentioned, which has now become normal to us, is actually when we built the R2 engine for the first time, us two, we sort of put it together, and I think we were, looking back, we were definitely naive. And it makes, after going away to the M Sport engine shop and building engines properly, taking all the measurements, seeing how the measurements affect compression ratios, how that affects your knock, all that sort of stuff, which is vital in engine building, actually makes you sort of go, oh, you know, there's a lot more to building an engine than just doing nuts and bolts up. And also how you can benefit. We've both played around with a few projects of our own, and it makes you realise, like, okay, actually the reason you measure those things is because you can eke out benefits and eke out performance from those changes, and which is why it's so important it's done correctly. I don't know if you felt that as well with, you know, learning all those measurements and key measurements.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I think we should probably talk about was coming back to Harper Adams in the middle of our placement to try and teach the second and first years a bit about engine building. We'd had a couple of issues with the rally car here, and so they were doing an engine build, and me and Archie thought, yep, do you know what? Just like we had when we were learning in the rally team, we'll come back and we'll try and teach other people a thing or two about building an engine. So we both made the trek down from Cumbria, and yeah, sort of tried to show off our knowledge a bit. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get the engine finished, but you know, it's in a day or a day or two. There's only so much you can get done.
And I think we gave the whole team a bit of an eye-opening into the finite details and importance of measurements on things in the engine, especially on like mainline and the lower crankcase of the engine, which is always an important thing, and showing how you can mitigate issues and the importance of cleanliness and the importance of being delicate when touching things on the inside of an engine, and how you should be wearing gloves and all that stuff, which I think it's almost come second nature to me and Elliot. But sometimes it's, when you're teaching people, it's almost you have to take a step back and go, right, actually I need to think back to where I was a couple of years ago or a year ago and sort of see how you can sum up our learnings over the year on placement in order to give that information to our team members. And yeah, I think that led us to, in conclusion, I think we both had a really, really great placement in how much we had learned, and I think we can both agree at how much we've come on, both as engine engineers and engine builders, but also as engineers ourselves. I think it's both really changed our outlook and the way we approach tasks, and even the way we're approaching our fourth year as well. I think we're definitely attacking that far more methodically and planned than I know I was in my first year, for example.